The morning sun cast long shadows across the marble floors of the Whitmore mansion, but inside the children's wing, darkness seemed to have taken permanent residence. Marcus Whitmore stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his study, his reflection showing a man who had aged 10 years in the past 6 months. His empire stretched across 3 continents. His name graced the covers of business magazines, and his wealth could solve most of the world's problems. Yet none of it mattered now. His triplets were dying, and all his money couldn't save them. The sound of soft footsteps made him turn. Dr. Elizabeth Harper, the children's specialist, approached with that same grave expression she'd worn for weeks now. Behind her walked his personal assistant, James, carrying another stack of medical files that would likely contain more devastating news. "Mr. Whitmore," Dr. Harper began, her voice carefully controlled. "I've received the latest test results from the specialist team in Switzerland." Marcus didn't move from the window. He'd heard this tone too many times before. Each consultation, each experimental treatment, each glimmer of hope had led to the same conclusion. His 8-year-old triplets, Emma, Ethan, and Ellie, were suffering from a rare genetic condition that was slowly shutting down their bodies. The best medical minds in the world had examined them, and the verdict remained unchanged. "How long?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Harper hesitated. 6 weeks, perhaps 8 at the most. Their immune systems are failing faster than we anticipated. The experimental treatment in Germany didn't show the results we hoped for." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. 6 weeks. His beautiful children, who should have been running through the gardens, laughing, playing, living, had 6 weeks left. He thought about Emma's love for painting, how she would spend hours creating colorful masterpieces that now covered the walls of the children's wing. Ethan's fascination with building things, his room filled with elaborate structures made from blocks and imagination. Ellie's gift for music, her small fingers dancing across piano keys with the grace of someone 3 times her age. "The pain medication is helping," Dr. Harper continued, "but their quality of life is deteriorating. They're spending more time sleeping, and when they're awake, they're increasingly weak." Marcus finally turned from the window. At 42, he was used to controlling every aspect of his life. He'd built his fortune from nothing, surviving a childhood of poverty and neglect to become one of the world's most powerful men. But this disease, this cruel twist of genetics, was beyond his control, and it was destroying him from the inside out. "What about their mother?" Dr. Harper asked gently. "Has she been informed of the updated prognosis?" Marcus's jaw tightened. Victoria, his ex-wife, had left them 2 years ago when the children's condition was first diagnosed. She couldn't handle the stress, she'd said. The constant hospital visits, the uncertainty, the gradual loss of the perfect life she'd imagined. She'd moved to France with her new husband and rarely called. The children had stopped asking about her months ago. "She won't be returning," Marcus said simply. The room fell silent except for the tick of an antique clock on the mantelpiece. Marcus had purchased that clock at an auction years ago, paying an enormous sum for something that had once belonged to a European royal family. Now it seemed to mock him, counting down the precious remaining moments of his children's lives. "Sir," James spoke up carefully, "the domestic staff has been asking about the children's care requirements. The night nurses mentioned that the children seem more comfortable when Mrs. Chun is around." Mrs. Chun was the head housekeeper, a woman in her 60s who had been with the family for over a decade. She'd been there when the triplets were born, had helped raise them when Victoria became overwhelmed, and had been a constant source of comfort as their health declined. "The children do seem calmer with her," Dr. Harper agreed. "Sometimes familiar, caring presence can be as valuable as medical intervention." Marcus nodded absently. Mrs. Chun had a way with the children that even the highly trained medical staff couldn't replicate. She would sit with them for hours, telling stories, helping them with gentle activities, making them smile even on their worst days. But Mrs. Chun was getting older too, and the constant stress was taking its toll on her as well. "Sir, there's also the matter of the new staff member," James continued. "The young woman who was hired last week to assist with the children's daily care. Maria Santos. She's been working in the children's wing, and I've received very positive reports from the nursing staff." Marcus barely remembered the hiring. James handled most of the domestic staff decisions, especially in recent months when Marcus had been consumed with medical consultations and business damage control. His company was suffering too. His distraction was costing millions in missed opportunities and delayed decisions. "What's her background?" Marcus asked, though he wasn't particularly interested. Another staff member, another person who would witness his family's tragedy and then move on to their next position. James consulted his tablet. 26 years old, originally from Colombia, but raised here. She has experience in childcare and basic medical support. Previously worked with special needs children. Mrs. Chen specifically requested someone with her background when we were recruiting. "Is she certified in pediatric care?" Dr. Harper asked. "Not formally, but she has extensive practical experience." The nursing staff report that she has excellent instincts with the children and seems to understand their needs intuitively. Marcus dismissed the conversation with a wave. Staff came and went, but nothing changed the fundamental reality. His children were dying, and he was powerless to stop it. The mansion felt different these days. Once filled with laughter, the sound of running feet, and the chaos of 3 energetic children, it had become quiet and somber. The triplets spent most of their time in their specially adapted bedrooms on the 2nd floor, surrounded by medical equipment and the constant presence of nurses. The rest of the house felt like a monument to happier times. Marcus made his way upstairs to visit the children, a ritual he'd maintained twice daily despite the pain it caused him. The children's wing had been renovated extensively to accommodate their needs. Hospital-grade equipment lined the walls, but Mrs. Chun had insisted on maintaining some normalcy. The walls were still painted in bright colors, filled with the children's artwork, and their favorite toys were arranged throughout the space. Emma's room was first. She was awake, propped up against pillows, working on a watercolor painting. Her once vibrant blonde hair had become thin and wispy, and her face was pale, but her eyes still held that spark of creativity that had always defined her. "Daddy," she said, her voice weak, but genuinely happy to see him. "Look what I'm painting." Marcus approached her bed and looked at the canvas. It was a garden scene, filled with flowers in impossible colors and butterflies that seemed to dance across the paper. In the center of the garden stood 3 small figures holding hands. "It's beautiful, sweetheart," Marcus said, sitting carefully on the edge of her bed. "Tell me about it." "It's the garden we're going to have when we get better," Emma explained, her small hand moving across the painting. "See? That's me, Ethan, and Ellie. We're going to plant flowers and chase butterflies and have picnics every day." The innocence in her voice broke something inside Marcus. The children didn't fully understand their condition. They knew they were sick, knew they felt tired and weak, but they still talked about getting better, about plans for the future. He and the medical staff had decided not to burden them with the full truth. "That sounds wonderful," Marcus managed to say. "I can't wait to see that garden." Emma smiled and returned to her painting. Marcus kissed her forehead and moved to Ethan's room next door. Ethan was building something with specialized blocks that had been designed for children with limited strength. His construction looked like a castle, complete with towers and bridges. Like his sister, he was pale and thin, but his mind remained sharp and active. "Dad, look," Ethan said excitedly. "It's a castle where nobody ever gets sick. There's a special force field that protects everyone inside." Marcus knelt beside his son's bed. "That's incredible, buddy. How does the force field work?" Ethan launched into an elaborate explanation involving crystals and magic and scientific principles he'd learned from educational videos. His enthusiasm was infectious, and for a moment, Marcus could almost forget about the monitors beeping in the background and the 4-line connected to his son's thin arm. Ellie's room was across the hall. She was at her keyboard, playing a simple melody with her small fingers. The music was hauntingly beautiful, filled with a melancholy that seemed far too mature for an 8-year-old. She'd always been the most intuitive of the triplets, seeming to understand things on a deeper level than her siblings. "That's a beautiful song, Ellie," Marcus said, settling into the chair beside her keyboard. "I wrote it for Mommy," Ellie said softly, not looking up from the keys. "I thought maybe if she heard it, she might want to come home." The words cut through Marcus like a knife. Of all the children, Ellie seemed to miss Victoria the most, perhaps because they'd shared a love of music. Victoria had been a talented pianist before marriage, and children became her focus. "Your mommy loves you very much," Marcus said carefully. She's having a difficult time right now." Ellie nodded but didn't stop playing. The melody continued, sad and beautiful and filled with longing. Marcus spent another hour with the children, reading stories, listening to their plans and dreams, pretending that everything would be fine. When he finally left their wing, he felt emotionally drained but also grateful for the time. Every moment with them was precious now. As he walked down the hallway toward his study, he noticed someone he didn't recognize coming out of Ellie's room. A young woman with dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, wearing scrubs, but not the uniform of the regular nursing staff. She was carrying a small basket and moving quietly, clearly trying not to disturb anyone. "Excuse me," Marcus called softly. The woman turned, and Marcus was struck by her eyes. They were dark brown, warm, and held a depth of kindness that seemed unusual for someone so young. This had to be Maria Santos, the new staff member James had mentioned. "Mr. Whitmore," she said, her voice soft but confident. "I'm Maria Santos. I'm assisting with the children's care. How are they today?" Marcus found himself asking. Maria paused, as if considering her words carefully. "Ellie was feeling a bit lonely, so I brought her some fresh flowers from the garden. She arranged them while she played piano. Emma finished 2 paintings this morning, and Ethan built a bridge that actually lights up. They're remarkable children." There was something in the way she spoke about them that was different from the clinical updates he usually received. She talked about them as individuals, not as patients. "They are remarkable," Marcus agreed. "Have you been working with children long?" "Most of my adult life," Maria replied. "I grew up helping care for my younger siblings, and I've always felt called to work with children who need extra support." "Called," Marcus repeated. It was an interesting choice of words. Maria smiled, and it transformed her entire face. "I believe every child deserves to feel loved and valued, regardless of their circumstances. Your children have so much light in them. It's an honor to spend time with them." There was something about her sincerity that caught Marcus off guard. Most of the staff, while professional and caring, maintained a certain emotional distance. It was understandable. Getting too attached to children with terminal illnesses was emotionally dangerous. But Maria spoke as if she'd already connected with them on a deeper level. "Thank you," Marcus said simply. "I appreciate everything you're doing for them." Maria nodded and continued down the hallway, her soft footsteps barely audible on the marble floors. Marcus watched her go, struck by something he couldn't quite identify. There had been a calmness about her, a sense of quiet strength that seemed unusual for someone dealing with such a difficult situation. That evening, Marcus sat in his study with a glass of whiskey, staring at financial reports without really seeing them. His business empire required constant attention, but his heart wasn't in it anymore. Nothing seemed important compared to the ticking clock of his children's lives. James knocked and entered, carrying more paperwork. "Sir, I have the reports from today's board meeting, and there are several contracts requiring your signature." Marcus gestured to his desk absently. "Just leave them there. I'll review them later." "Sir, if I may," James said carefully, "the board is concerned about your extended absence from day-to-day operations. They understand the circumstances, of course, but there are decisions that only you can make." Marcus looked up sharply. "Are you suggesting I should prioritize business over my dying children?" "Of course not, sir. I'm simply conveying their concerns. Perhaps we could arrange for more meetings to be held here at the house, or video conferences from your study." Marcus nodded wearily. The business would have to continue somehow. He employed thousands of people worldwide, and his decisions affected countless lives beyond his own family. But the thought of pretending to care about profit margins and market expansion when his children were suffering felt almost obscene. "Schedule whatever needs to be scheduled," Marcus said finally. "But my priority remains unchanged." 3 weeks had passed since the devastating prognosis, and Marcus noticed changes in the household routine that he couldn't quite explain. The children's wing, which had felt like a hospital ward for months, somehow felt different. There was still the constant presence of medical equipment and nursing staff, but something had shifted in the atmosphere. It started with small things. Marcus would walk past the children's rooms and hear genuine laughter, not the forced cheerfulness that had become common among the medical staff. The children seemed more engaged, more present, despite their declining physical condition. When he asked Dr. Harper about it during their weekly consultation, she looked puzzled but pleased. Their vital signs haven't improved, Dr. Harper explained, reviewing the latest charts, but their emotional well-being seems remarkably stable. Typically, children with their condition experience increasing depression and withdrawal as the disease progresses. Your children are actually showing signs of improved mental state. Marcus found this observation both encouraging and confusing. What could be causing that? It's difficult to say definitively, but environment plays a crucial role in how children cope with serious illness. They seem to be responding well to their current care routine. That afternoon, Marcus decided to spend more time observing the daily activities in the children's wing rather than just his brief visits. He positioned himself in the small family room adjacent to their bedrooms, ostensibly working on his laptop, but actually watching the interactions between his children and their caregivers. Mrs. Chun moved through her duties with her usual efficiency and warmth, but Marcus noticed that Maria Santos had become more than just an additional staff member. She seemed to understand each child's individual needs and preferences in a way that went beyond mere professional competence. With Emma, Maria would sit patiently while the little girl explained her paintings in elaborate detail, asking thoughtful questions that encouraged Emma to think more deeply about her artistic choices. Marcus watched as Maria helped Emma mix colors, not by doing it for her, but by guiding her hands and letting her discover new combinations. "What happens when you add just a tiny bit of yellow to that purple?" Maria asked, her voice filled with genuine curiosity. Emma's eyes lit up as she made the adjustment. "It changes everything. It's like magic." "You're absolutely right," Maria agreed. "Colors have power. They can tell stories and make people feel different emotions." "What story is this color telling you?" Emma considered this seriously, then began describing an elaborate tale about a magical forest where the trees changed colors based on the emotions of the creatures living beneath them. Marcus found himself drawn into the story, impressed by his daughter's imagination and Maria's ability to nurture it. In Ethan's room, Maria approached his love of building with equal enthusiasm. She had somehow acquired more sophisticated construction materials than the simple blocks he'd been limited to previously. Under her guidance, Ethan was creating increasingly complex structures that incorporated basic engineering principles. "Remember what we talked about yesterday regarding support beams?" Maria asked, watching as Ethan carefully positioned a piece. Ethan nodded seriously. "The foundation has to be strong enough to hold everything else up, and you need to distribute the weight evenly." "Exactly. And what happens if one part of the structure is weaker than the others?" "The whole thing could fall down," Ethan replied. "But if you build it right, it can hold up against almost anything." Marcus felt a strange tightness in his chest listening to this conversation. Were they still talking about building blocks, or was Maria somehow helping his son understand deeper concepts about strength and resilience? With Ellie, Maria's approach was different again. She would sit quietly beside the piano, sometimes humming along with Ellie's playing, sometimes asking about the emotions behind the music. Marcus had noticed that Ellie's compositions had become more complex and, surprisingly, less melancholy over the past few weeks. "This new song feels different from your others," Maria observed after Ellie finished playing. "What inspired it?" Ellie's small hands rested on the keys. "I was thinking about how sometimes sad things and happy things can happen at the same time, and it doesn't mean one of them isn't real." Maria nodded thoughtfully. "That's very wise. Music can hold both feelings together, can it? Like how a sunset can be beautiful even though it means the day is ending." "Yes," Ellie exclaimed. "Exactly like that. The ending can be beautiful too." Marcus felt his breath catch. Was his 8-year-old daughter somehow coming to terms with her mortality in a way that he couldn't? And was Maria helping her find peace instead of despair? As the days continued, Marcus found himself looking forward to these observation sessions. He began to see patterns in Maria's approach that intrigued him. She never talked down to the children or treated them as if they were fragile. Instead, she engaged with them as complete individuals whose thoughts and feelings mattered. She celebrated their achievements, no matter how small, and helped them find meaning and joy in activities that were within their physical capabilities. More importantly, she seemed to understand something about childhood resilience that the medical team, with all their expertise, had missed. The children were facing something terrible, but they were still children. They still needed to learn, to create, to grow emotionally and intellectually, even if their bodies were failing them. One evening, as Marcus was leaving the children's wing after his usual good-night visits, he encountered Maria in the hallway. She was carrying what appeared to be a small herb garden in a portable container. "Mr. Whitmore," she said with a slight smile. "Perfect timing. I wanted to ask your permission for something." "What's that?" Marcus asked, gesturing toward the plants. The children have been asking about gardens, especially since Emma has been painting so many garden scenes. I thought we might create a small indoor garden that they could tend to from their beds. Nothing complicated, just some herbs and small flowering plants that don't require much maintenance. Marcus looked at the carefully arranged plants. Basil, mint, small lavender bushes, and tiny flowers in bright colors. "You think they're strong enough to care for plants?" "I think they need to feel useful," Maria replied carefully. "Right now, everything is done for them. They're passive recipients of care, which is necessary medically, but it can be emotionally challenging. Having something small to nurture might give them a sense of purpose." The insight struck Marcus as profound. His children had always been active, independent kids who took pride in their accomplishments. The progression of their illness had gradually stripped away their ability to do things for themselves, leaving them increasingly dependent on others. He hadn't considered how that might affect their sense of identity and self-worth. "Do you have experience with this type of therapy?" Marcus asked. Maria's expression became thoughtful. "I worked with a family in my previous position whose child had a similar condition. Not exactly the same, but a terminal illness that progressed over time. We found that giving her small responsibilities actually improved her quality of life significantly. She felt like she was contributing something positive instead of just waiting." The last word hung in the air between them. Waiting. That's what they were all doing, wasn't it? Waiting for the inevitable while pretending to hope for a miracle. "What kind of responsibilities are we talking about?" Marcus asked. "Simple things. Watering the plants with assistance, helping to choose which herbs to use for their meals, maybe learning about what different plants need to thrive." Emma could paint the different stages of growth. Ethan could design better containers or support systems for the plants. Ellie could observe how different types of music affect plant growth. It's actually a real area of scientific study. Marcus found himself nodding. Each suggestion built on the children's existing interests while giving them something new to focus on. "And you believe this will help them emotionally?" "I believe that everyone needs to feel like their life has meaning and purpose," Maria said simply. "That's true whether you have 90 years ahead of you or 9 weeks. These children have incredible spirits. They deserve to feel like they're living, not just existing." The conversation stayed with Marcus long after Maria had continued on her way. That night, instead of his usual whiskey and brooding, he found himself researching therapeutic approaches for terminally ill children. What he discovered both impressed and disturbed him. There were entire fields of study devoted to improving quality of life for children facing end-of-life situations. Play therapy, art therapy, music therapy, horticultural therapy, all designed to help children maintain their sense of identity and purpose even as their physical capabilities declined. Somehow, despite access to the world's best medical care, this aspect of his children's treatment had been overlooked. The next morning, Marcus called a meeting with Dr. Harper and the nursing staff. He asked Maria to attend as well, which seemed to surprise her. "I want to discuss expanding our approach to the children's care," Marcus began. "I'm interested in incorporating some therapeutic activities that go beyond medical management." Dr. Harper looked curious, but cautious. "What type of activities are you considering?" Marcus gestured to Maria. "Maria has proposed some ideas that I'd like the medical team to evaluate." Maria straightened in her chair, clearly nervous about addressing the group of medical professionals. But when she began to speak about her observations of the children and her suggestions for therapeutic activities, her voice grew confident and passionate. She talked about the importance of maintaining the children's sense of agency and purpose. She presented research on horticultural therapy, the psychological benefits of creative expression, and the role of meaningful activity in improving quality of life for pediatric patients. She had clearly done extensive research to support her proposals. The goal isn't to cure their condition, Maria explained. It's to ensure that the time they have left is filled with joy, growth, and dignity. They're not just bodies with a disease. They're complete human beings with minds and spirits that deserve to flourish. Dr. Harper was quiet for a long moment after Maria finished her presentation. Your approach aligns with palliative care principles that we should have been incorporating all along, she admitted. I think we've been so focused on the medical aspects that we've neglected the psychological and emotional dimensions. The nursing staff nodded in agreement. Several mentioned specific observations about the children's improved mood and engagement since Maria had joined the team. What do you need from us to implement these ideas? Marcus asked. Over the following hour, they developed a comprehensive plan. The small indoor garden was approved, along with expanded art supplies for Emma, more sophisticated building materials for Ethan, and a digital piano with recording capabilities for Ellie. More importantly, they restructured the daily routine to include dedicated time for these therapeutic activities, with Maria taking the lead role in coordination. Mrs. Chun, who had been quiet during most of the meeting, finally spoke up. In all my years caring for this family, I've never seen the children respond to anyone the way they respond to Maria. She has a gift. Marcus looked at Maria, who blushed at the compliment. He was beginning to understand that Mrs. Chun was right. Maria did seem to have a natural intuition for working with the children that went beyond training or experience. As the meeting broke up and people began to file out, Marcus asked Maria to stay behind. I want to thank you, he said when they were alone. I realize now that we've been managing my children's illness, but not really helping them live with it. You've shown us the difference. Maria's eyes were thoughtful. Your children are extraordinary, Mr. Whitmore. Emma has the soul of an artist, Ethan has the mind of an engineer, and Ellie has the heart of a philosopher. Those parts of them don't disappear because their bodies are sick. They just need different ways to express themselves. How do you see all of that so clearly when the rest of us missed it? Maria was quiet for a moment, clearly choosing her words carefully. I think sometimes when we're faced with something as terrible as what your family is going through, we focus so much on what's being lost that we forget to see what's still there. Your children are still learning, still growing, still becoming who they're meant to be. That doesn't stop because they're sick. Marcus felt something shift inside him as he listened to her words. For the transformation in the Whitmore household had become undeniable. What started as small changes in routine had evolved into something much more significant. Marcus found himself restructuring his entire schedule around the children's activities, participating in ways he hadn't since they were very young and healthy. The indoor garden had become the centerpiece of their therapeutic program, but its impact went far beyond what anyone had anticipated. Each child had claimed responsibility for specific plants, and their different approaches revealed aspects of their personalities that had been overshadowed by their illness. Emma had chosen the flowering plants and treated each bloom like a personal victory. She documented their growth through detailed paintings, creating a visual journal that tracked not just the plant's progress, but her own evolving artistic skills. Her paintings had become more sophisticated, incorporating techniques that Maria had taught her and themes that seemed to reflect a mature understanding of life cycles. Look, Daddy, Emma said one afternoon, showing him her latest painting. The flowers don't just grow and then die. They make seeds first, so new flowers can grow later. It's like they're leaving a gift for the future. Marcus studied the painting, which showed a flower in various stages from bud to full bloom to seed pod. The imagery was beautiful, but also profound in a way that took his breath away. His 8-year-old daughter was grappling with concepts of legacy and continuity that most adults struggled to understand. Ethan had taken charge of the herb garden with characteristic thoroughness. He had researched the optimal growing conditions for each plant and designed an elaborate system for monitoring soil moisture, light exposure, and temperature. His engineering projects had become increasingly sophisticated, incorporating concepts that impressed even Marcus's business associates who occasionally visited. The basil needs more drainage than the mint, Ethan explained to Dr. Harper during one of her visits, So I designed these modular containers that can be adjusted based on each plant's needs. See how this one has more holes in the bottom? And this elevated section allows excess water to drain away without affecting the other plants. Dr. Harper examined the setup with genuine admiration. Ethan, this is remarkably sophisticated engineering for someone your age. Have you thought about what you'd like to study when you're older? The question hung in the air for a moment. Everyone present knew that Ethan wouldn't be getting older, at least not in the way Dr. Harper meant. But instead of awkwardness, Ethan's response revealed a wisdom that surprised them all. I'm studying it right now, he said simply. Every day I figure out how to make things work better. That's what engineers do, right? They solve problems and make life better for people. Marcus felt his chest tighten with pride and sorrow. His son understood his passion and had found a way to pursue it within the constraints of his condition. He was already an engineer in the ways that truly mattered. Ellie had claimed the lavender plants, drawn to their subtle fragrance, and the way their flowers moved in the slight breeze from the room's ventilation system. She had begun composing pieces inspired by the garden's sounds, the gentle drip of the irrigation system, the whisper of air through the leaves, the almost inaudible vibration of growth itself. Plants have music too, Ellie told Maria one evening as they sat beside the garden. It's very quiet, but if you listen carefully, you can hear it. Each plant has its own song. Maria listened intently as Ellie played her latest composition, a piece that somehow captured the feeling of slow, patient growth. The melody was gentle and hopeful, with subtle variations that suggested the passage of time and the accumulation of small changes into something significant. Your music tells stories that words can't tell, Maria observed. That's a very special gift. I want to record all the garden songs, Ellie said, so people can hear how beautiful growing sounds. The recording project had become Ellie's major undertaking. With help from a sound engineer that Marcus had hired, she was creating a collection of compositions inspired by different aspects of the garden's life cycle. The music was hauntingly beautiful, filled with a depth of understanding that seemed impossible for someone so young. Marcus had begun to realize that his children weren't just coping with their condition, they were transcending it. Under Maria's guidance, they had found ways to channel their intelligence, creativity, and passion into pursuits that gave their lives profound meaning. They were creating lasting legacies that would outlive their brief time on Earth. This realization led to a conversation between Marcus and Maria that would change everything. It was a quiet evening in late autumn. The children were sleeping, their daily pain medication having provided them with peaceful rest. Marcus found Maria in the small office adjacent to the children's wing, working on lesson plans for the next day's activities. Maria, Marcus said, settling into a chair across from her desk. I need to ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest with me. Maria looked up from her planning, her expression attentive but calm. Of course. Do you believe in miracles? The question seemed to surprise her. She was quiet for a long moment, clearly considering her response carefully. I believe in transformation, she said finally. I've seen children who were given no hope find ways to create meaning and joy in their lives. I've seen families torn apart by tragedy discover reserves of strength they didn't know they had. I've seen love accomplish things that medicine couldn't. If that's what you mean by miracles, then, yes, I do. Marcus nodded slowly. What I'm seeing with my children, this change in them, this growth despite their physical decline, is that what you mean? Partly, Maria agreed. But I think you're experiencing transformation too, Mr. Whitmore. You're seeing your children differently now. You're participating in their lives instead of just protecting them from death. That's its own kind of miracle. Marcus felt the truth of her words resonate through him. He had changed over the past month, though he hadn't fully recognized it until she pointed it out. His relationship with his children had deepened in ways he hadn't thought possible. Instead of being consumed by grief for what they were losing, he had begun to appreciate what they still had. There's something else, Marcus said. I've been thinking about legacy, about what remains after we're gone. My children are creating things that will last beyond their lives. Emma's paintings, Ethan's engineering insights, Ellie's music. But I wonder if there's more we could do. Maria's eyes showed interest, but also caution. What are you thinking? I want to establish something permanent. A foundation, maybe, or a program that could help other families facing similar situations. But I want my children to be part of creating it. I want their ideas and their insights to shape whatever we build. The idea had been growing in Marcus's mind for weeks. His children had taught him so much about resilience, creativity, and finding meaning in difficult circumstances. Other families could benefit from these insights, from the approaches that Maria had introduced, from the therapeutic programs they had developed together. That's a beautiful idea, Maria said. Have you talked to the children about it? Not yet. I wanted to discuss it with you first. You understand them better than anyone. Do you think they're ready for a conversation about creating something that would help other children? Maria considered this carefully. I think they would be honored to contribute to something like that. They're already aware that their situation is unusual and that they have access to resources that other families don't have. Emma has asked me several times why some children don't have the same art supplies she does. Ethan wants to know if his engineering ideas could help other kids build things. Ellie has mentioned wanting to share her music with children who are sad. Marcus felt a surge of love and pride for his children. Even while facing their own mortality, they were thinking about how they could help others. Where did children learn that kind of generosity? How do you think we should approach it? Marcus asked. Let them lead, Maria suggested. Ask them what they think would be most helpful for other children in similar situations. They have insights that adults might miss because they're living the experience directly. The conversation with the children took place the following afternoon. Marcus had gathered them in the family room adjacent to their bedrooms, where they could all participate comfortably. Maria was present, as was Mrs. Chun, who had become an integral part of their extended family. I want to talk to you three about something important, Marcus began. You know how much you've taught me over the past few months about being brave and creative and finding ways to be happy even when things are difficult. The children nodded, their expressions serious but interested. Well, I've been thinking that other children who are going through hard times like you might benefit from learning the same things. What if we could create something, a place or a program, that would help other families the way you've helped me? Emma's eyes lit up immediately, like a place where kids could paint and learn about colors and feelings. Yes, Marcus said. Exactly like that. What else do you think would be important? Ethan spoke up eagerly. A place where they could build things and solve problems, even if they can't use regular tools because they're sick or tired. And music, Ellie added quietly. A place where they could make music about their feelings and learn that sad songs can be beautiful too. Marcus felt his throat tighten with emotion. His children understood instinctively what such a place should offer because they had experienced it themselves. What else? He asked. The ideas came rapidly. Gardens that children could tend to from their beds or wheelchairs. Art supplies that were adapted for children with limited mobility or strength. Recording equipment so children could preserve their creations. Libraries with books about children who had overcome difficulties. Spaces where families could spend time together doing normal activities even in abnormal circumstances. As the children talked, their excitement grew. They began building on each other's ideas, creating an elaborate vision for what Marcus began to think of as a center for healing. Not medical healing, necessarily, but emotional and spiritual healing. We should call it the Garden Center, Emma suggested, because gardens have everything: beauty, growth, different seasons, and they help things flourish even in difficult conditions. The Growing Garden Center, Ethan amended, because everything is always growing and changing and getting better in some way. Ellie nodded approvingly. And we could have garden music playing softly everywhere, so it feels peaceful and alive at the same time. Marcus looked at Maria, who was smiling with tears in her eyes. In 20 minutes, his children had outlined a comprehensive vision for something that could genuinely help families facing similar challenges. Winter arrived early that year, and with it came the harsh reality that time was running shorter than anyone had hoped. The children's physical condition had deteriorated noticeably over the past 2 weeks, though their spirits remained remarkably strong. Dr. Harper had quietly adjusted her prognosis, and Marcus understood without being told that they were likely looking at weeks rather than months. Yet paradoxically, the household had never felt more alive with purpose and hope. The Growing Garden Center had evolved from a heartfelt idea into a comprehensive project with architectural plans, program designs, and a substantial financial foundation. Marcus had assembled a team of experts in child psychology, therapeutic design, and pediatric care to bring his children's vision to life. But he insisted that every major decision be approved by Emma, Ethan, and Ellie themselves. "This is your creation," he told them during one of their planning sessions. "The experts can help us figure out how to build it, but you three are the ones who understand what it needs to be." The children had taken their role as co-founders seriously, approaching each decision with thoughtfulness that impressed even the professional consultants. They tested proposed activities, evaluated design concepts, and provided feedback that consistently improved the project. Emma had become particularly focused on ensuring that the art program would be accessible to children with various physical limitations. She worked with an occupational therapist to test different tools and techniques, often using herself as a test subject to understand what worked when hands were weak or coordination was impaired. "If I can still paint when my hands shake," she told the art therapy consultant, "then other kids can too. We just need to find the right tools and the right ways to hold them." Her determination was both inspiring and heartbreaking. Marcus watched his daughter struggle with tasks that had once been effortless for her. But instead of becoming frustrated, she approached each challenge as a problem to be solved for the benefit of future children. Ethan had thrown himself into designing adaptive building systems with characteristic engineering precision. Despite his declining strength, he spent hours testing different materials and construction methods, always with an eye toward what would work for children with limited physical capabilities. "Regular blocks are too heavy for kids who are really sick," he explained to the program designer, demonstrating with a set of lightweight foam blocks that he'd convinced Marcus to order. "But if you make them too light, they don't feel substantial enough to be satisfying. These are perfect, light enough to handle, but solid enough to feel real." He had also insisted on developing building projects that could be completed in stages, recognizing that children with serious illnesses might not have the energy for long construction sessions. "Sometimes I can only work for 10 minutes before I need to rest," Ethan said matter-of-factly. "But if the project is designed right, those 10 minutes can still accomplish something important. Then, tomorrow, I can do another 10 minutes and build on what I did yesterday." Ellie had become the center's unofficial philosopher, thinking deeply about the emotional aspects of what they were creating. Her latest musical compositions had evolved into what she called comfort songs, pieces specifically designed to help children process difficult emotions. "When you're scared or sad, sometimes regular music is too happy or too complicated," she explained to the music therapy specialist. "These songs understand that you're feeling bad, but they don't make you feel worse. They just sit with you and let you know it's okay to feel whatever you're feeling." Her insight into the emotional needs of seriously ill children consistently amazed the adults around her. She seemed to understand intuitively what children needed to hear and feel during their darkest moments. As the project developed, Marcus found himself working more closely with Maria than ever before. She had become the primary liaison between the children and the professional team, translating the children's ideas into practical implementation strategies. Her understanding of both the children's vision and the realities of therapeutic programming made her invaluable to the project's success. "The children want this to be a place of growth, not just coping," Maria explained during a meeting with the center's future director. "They've experienced firsthand how important it is to feel like you're still becoming who you're meant to be, even when your body is failing. That has to be at the core of everything we do." Marcus had also noticed that Maria's role in their family had evolved far beyond her original job description. She had become a trusted advisor, a creative collaborator, and something approaching a family friend. The children clearly adored her, and her presence brought a stability and warmth to their daily routine that he hadn't realized was missing. One evening, as they reviewed the latest architectural plans for the center, Marcus found himself studying Maria more than the blueprints. She was bent over the drawings, pointing out modifications that would better accommodate children in wheelchairs, her dark hair falling across her face as she concentrated. There was something about her dedication, her genuine care for his children, and her ability to see possibilities where others saw only limitations that touched him in ways he hadn't expected. "Maria," he said suddenly, interrupting her explanation about sight lines in the music therapy room. She looked up, surprised by the interruption. Yes. Marcus realized he didn't know how to articulate what he was thinking. How do you tell someone that they've saved your family in ways that go beyond their professional responsibilities? How do you express gratitude for someone who has helped your dying children find meaning and joy in their remaining time? I wanted to thank you, he said finally. Not just for your work with the children, but for giving us this. For helping us see that we could create something positive out of something so devastating. Maria's expression softened. Mr. Whitmore, your children created this. I just helped them recognize what they already knew. No, Marcus said firmly. Without you, we would still be sitting in those rooms waiting for the inevitable. You showed us that we could be living instead of just surviving. That's the difference between existing and truly being alive. Their conversation was interrupted by a soft knock on the door. Mrs. Chun entered, her expression concerned. Mr. Whitmore, I'm sorry to disturb you, but Ellie is asking for you. She's having difficulty sleeping, and she says she needs to tell you something important. Marcus and Maria hurried upstairs to find Ellie awake and alert despite the late hour. She was sitting up in bed, her small hands folded in her lap, wearing an expression of unusual seriousness. Daddy, she said as he approached her bed, I need to tell you something about the garden center. Marcus sat beside her, Maria taking a chair nearby. What is it, sweetheart? Ellie was quiet for a moment, clearly choosing her words carefully. I know I'm going to die soon, she said with startling directness. We all know it, even though everyone tries to pretend we don't. But I'm not scared anymore. Marcus felt his heart clench, but he forced himself to remain calm. They had all agreed to follow the children's lead in conversations about their condition, neither forcing discussion nor avoiding it when they initiated it. Can you tell me why you're not scared? He asked gently. Because we're making something beautiful, Ellie replied. When I die, the garden center will still be here. Other children will come and make music and feel better because of something we created. It's like our lives are seeds, and the garden center is the garden that grows from them. The metaphor was so similar to Emma's earlier observation about flowers leaving seeds for future growth that Marcus wondered if the children had been discussing these concepts among themselves. That's a beautiful way to think about it, Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. But I want to make sure the garden center remembers us the right way, Ellie continued. Not as the sick children who died, but as the children who lived, who created things and loved things and made other people's lives better. That's what I want people to remember. Maria leaned forward slightly. How do you think we can make sure people remember you that way? Ellie smiled, the first genuinely happy expression she'd worn all evening. Our creations will show them. Emma's paintings will show them how to see beauty in everything. Ethan's building designs will show them how to solve problems and make things work better. My music will show them that feelings, even sad feelings, can be turned into something beautiful. She paused, then added with wisdom that seemed far beyond her years. People won't need to be sad about us dying if they can see how much living we did while we were here. Marcus found himself speechless. His 8-year-old daughter had articulated something profound about legacy, and meaning that many adults struggled to understand. She wasn't asking to be remembered for her suffering, but for her contributions. She wanted her life to be measured not by its brevity, but by its impact. Ellie, he said finally, you are the wisest person I've ever known. She giggled at that, suddenly, sounding like the child she was. I just pay attention to things. And I listen to what the garden teaches us about growing and changing and becoming something new. As Marcus tucked Ellie back into bed and kissed her goodnight, he realized that his daughter had given him a gift. She had shown him how to think about their situation in a way that emphasized life rather than death, creation rather than loss, meaning rather than tragedy. Walking back downstairs with Maria, Marcus felt something shift in his understanding of what they were facing as a family. The children were dying, and that remained devastating. But they were also living extraordinarily full lives right up until the end. They were creating lasting legacies, touching the lives of everyone around them, and building something that would help countless other families. She's remarkable, Maria said softly as they reached the bottom of the stairs. They all are, Marcus replied. And I'm beginning to understand that you're remarkable too. Maria looked surprised. I'm just doing my job. No, Marcus said, stopping and turning to face her. You're doing something far more important than any job description could capture. You're helping my children live their lives to the fullest while they still can. You're helping our family find meaning in the midst of tragedy. You're showing us that love and hope and purpose can exist even in the darkest circumstances. For a moment, they stood in the dimly lit hallway, the weight of the conversation settling between them. Marcus realized that somewhere along the way, his feelings for Maria had evolved beyond gratitude and professional appreciation. She had become an integral part of their family's journey, and the thought of facing the coming weeks without her felt impossible. Maria, he said quietly, I know this is complicated, and the timing is far from ideal, but I need you to know that you've become more than just part of the children's care team. You've become essential to them and to me. The final weeks arrived with an unexpected peace. Rather than the crescendo of grief and panic that Marcus had anticipated, the household settled into a rhythm of quiet purpose and profound connection. The children's physical decline was undeniable now, but their spirits remained luminous, sustained by the knowledge that they were completing something important. The growing garden center had moved from blueprints to reality with remarkable speed. Marcus had used every resource at his disposal to fast-track the construction, understanding that his children needed to see their vision come to life. The first phase of the center was nearing completion, and the children had been able to participate in final design decisions and the selection of initial program elements. Emma spent her stronger hours putting finishing touches on a series of paintings that would be permanently displayed in the center's art therapy wing. Her technique had continued to evolve, and her latest works showed a mastery of color and emotion that amazed everyone who saw them. She had created a collection called Seeds of Joy, featuring paintings that captured different aspects of growth, transformation, and hope. This one is my favorite, Emma told Marcus, indicating a painting that showed a small child planting flowers in a garden that seemed to extend beyond the borders of the canvas. It's about how one person's kindness can grow into something that helps lots of people, even after that person isn't there anymore. The painting was breathtakingly beautiful, filled with light and movement that seemed to make the flowers dance on the canvas. But it was the deeper meaning that took Marcus's breath away. His daughter was painting her own legacy, her understanding that the love and creativity she was sharing would continue to bloom long after she was gone. Ethan had completed his adaptive construction system, working with a manufacturer to create building sets specifically designed for children with physical limitations. His engineering insights had resulted in innovative materials and connection methods that made complex construction possible even for children with minimal strength or dexterity. The best part, Ethan explained to the program director during the system's final testing, is that kids won't feel like they're using special tools because they're sick. These tools are actually better than regular building blocks for everyone. They're easier to connect, more stable once they're together, and they can make more interesting shapes. His pride in the achievement was evident, and Marcus marveled at his son's ability to solve complex problems while considering the needs and feelings of other children. Ethan had created something that would help thousands of children, but he'd done it in a way that preserved their dignity and sense of capability. Ellie had recorded a collection of compositions that would form the foundation of the center's music therapy program. Her comfort songs had been professionally recorded with the help of session musicians who donated their time to the project. The resulting album was hauntingly beautiful, filled with melodies that somehow managed to acknowledge pain while offering solace. Music is like a friend that stays with you, Ellie explained to the music therapy coordinator. When kids are scared or sad, these songs will sit with them and help them remember that they're not alone. The recording session had been magical. Professional musicians had listened to Ellie's simple piano versions of her compositions and then added subtle orchestration that enhanced the emotional impact without overwhelming her delicate melodies. The final product was a musical legacy that would comfort countless children in their darkest moments. As the center neared its opening, Marcus found himself spending less time in his corporate office and more time at the construction site with his children. They visited regularly, their wheelchairs, and portable oxygen equipment becoming familiar sights among the construction crews. The workers had embraced the children's presence, often stopping to show them progress on specific areas and asking for their input on details. "These kids are something special," the foreman told Marcus one afternoon as they watched Ethan direct the installation of his building system in what would become the engineering activity room. "I've been doing construction for 30 years, and I've never seen anyone care about a project the way these three care about this place." Marcus nodded, watching his son's face light up as the first modular building station was secured in place exactly where he had envisioned it. "They understand that this place will help other children long after they're gone. It gives their lives a meaning that goes beyond their illness." The conversation was interrupted by Ellie calling out from across the room. She was sitting in her wheelchair in what would become the music therapy space, her portable keyboard on her lap, playing one of her compositions to test the acoustics. "Daddy, come listen," she called. "The room makes my songs sound even more beautiful." Marcus and the foreman walked over to where Ellie was playing. The melody filled the space with warmth, and the architectural acoustics enhanced the emotional resonance of her music. Around the room, construction workers had stopped their tasks to listen, their faces reflecting the same sense of peace that Ellie's music always created. "That's perfect, sweetheart," Marcus said, kneeling beside her wheelchair. "Other children are going to find so much comfort in your music." Ellie smiled and continued playing, her small fingers moving across the keys with grace that belied her physical weakness. As Marcus listened, he realized that this moment captured everything his family had accomplished over the past months. His daughter, despite her declining health, was creating beauty that would outlast her brief life. She was transforming her suffering into service, her pain into purpose. That evening, as the family gathered for dinner in the children's wing, Maria shared news that brought tears to everyone's eyes. The first families had been selected for the center's pilot program, and the response from the pediatric medical community had been overwhelming. 17 hospitals have already requested information about replicating the program, Maria reported. "And the therapeutic activities you three have developed are being studied by child life specialists across the country. You're not just helping the children who will come to our center. You're changing how everyone thinks about caring for seriously ill children." Emma clapped her hands together, though the gesture was weaker than it would have been months earlier. "Really? Other places want to have gardens and art rooms like ours. Even better," Maria continued. "They want to use your specific ideas, Emma's adaptive art techniques, Ethan's building system, Ellie's comfort music. Your names will be associated with these programs wherever they're implemented." The children's excitement was infectious, and Marcus felt a surge of pride that temporarily overwhelmed his grief. His children had created something lasting and meaningful. Their brief lives would have impact that extended far beyond what most people accomplished in decades. As the conversation continued, Marcus noticed that Maria was watching him with an expression he couldn't quite interpret. Over the past weeks, their relationship had deepened into something that went beyond professional collaboration or even friendship. She had become his partner in helping the children navigate their final weeks, his confidant during the most difficult moments, and his source of strength when hope seemed impossible. After the children were settled for the night, Marcus and Maria found themselves in the garden that had started it all. The original indoor plants had thrived beyond everyone's expectations, creating a lush miniature ecosystem that the children tended daily. In the evening light, with the sound of the small fountain providing gentle background music, it felt like a sanctuary. "I've been thinking about something," Marcus said as they sat on the bench beside the fountain. "About what happens after." Maria nodded, understanding immediately what he meant. They had all been avoiding direct discussion of the end, but it was approaching whether they acknowledged it or not. "The children have made it clear that they want their legacy to be about life and growth, not death and mourning," Marcus continued. "I want to honor that, but I'm not sure how to prepare for afterward." Maria was quiet for a moment, her gaze focused on the garden. "I think they've already shown us how," she said finally. "Look at everything they've accomplished in the past few months. They've transformed their experience of illness into something beautiful and meaningful. They've created lasting gifts for other families. They've found ways to continue growing and learning right up until the end." She turned to face him, her dark eyes reflecting the soft light from the fountain. They've shown us that the end of life doesn't have to mean the end of purpose or joy or love. Those things can continue, can even grow stronger, when we focus on what we're giving rather than what we're losing. Marcus felt the truth of her words settle deep in his chest. His children had indeed shown him a different way to approach death, not as a defeat or a tragedy, but as a transition that could be faced with dignity, purpose, and love. "Maria," he said quietly, "I need to tell you something. These past months, working with you, watching you care for my children, seeing how you've helped us all find meaning in this situation, I've fallen in love with you." The words hung in the air between them, and Marcus immediately wondered if he'd made a terrible mistake. The timing was awful, the circumstances were complicated, and he had no right to burden her with his feelings when she was focused on caring for his dying children. But Maria didn't pull away or look shocked. Instead, she reached for his hand, her fingers warm and steady against his. "I love you too," she said simply. "I love you, and I love Emma, Ethan, and Ellie. You've all become the most important part of my life. Being here, being part of this family's journey, has shown me what love really means." They sat together in the quiet garden, holding hands and listening to the gentle sound of water over stones. Around them, the plants they had tended together with the children grew strong and healthy, a living testament to the power of care, attention, and love to create beauty even in difficult circumstances. "What happens now?" Marcus asked. "Now we continue loving them and supporting them for as long as we have," Maria replied. "We help them complete their work on the center. We make sure they know how proud we are of everything they've accomplished. We give them the peace and security of knowing that their lives have mattered." Marcus nodded, understanding that she was right. There would be time later to explore what their relationship might become. For now, their focus needed to remain on the children and the precious time that remained. Over the following days, that philosophy guided everything they did. Instead of dwelling on the approaching end, they celebrated each small moment of joy and connection. They continued working on the center, making final decisions, and putting finishing touches on the programs the children had designed. They spent quiet hours in the garden, reading stories and making music and simply being present with each other. The children's physical condition continued to decline, but their spirits remained remarkably strong. They spoke often about the other children who would benefit from the center, about the families who would find hope and healing in the programs they had created. They talked about their paintings, their music, their engineering innovations as gifts they were leaving for the world. On a quiet Tuesday morning in early December, as snow began to fall outside the windows of the children's wing, Emma looked up from the painting she was working on and said something that captured the essence of everything they had learned together. "Daddy," she said, her voice weak but clear, "I'm not afraid anymore. We made something beautiful. We helped other people. We loved each other. That's what life is supposed to be about, isn't it?" Marcus knelt beside her bed, taking her small hand in his. "Yes, sweetheart. That's exactly what life is supposed to be about. And you three have lived more fully in 8 years than most people do in 80. Emma smiled and squeezed his hand with what little strength she had left. Around them, the garden bloomed. The music played softly, and the evidence of love and creativity filled every corner of the room. The growing garden center would open 6 months later, welcoming its first families and beginning the work that Emma, Ethan, and Ellie had envisioned. The programs they had designed would help thousands of children and families find meaning, purpose, and joy even in the midst of serious illness. But the center was more than just a building or a collection of therapeutic programs. It was proof that even the briefest lives could have profound and lasting impact when they were lived with love, creativity, and dedication to serving others. Marcus and Maria would eventually marry, their love story born from their shared commitment to the children and their mission. Together, they would oversee the expansion of the growing garden center model to hospitals and communities around the world, ensuring that Emma, Ethan, and Ellie's legacy would touch the lives of countless children for generations to come. The maid who had walked into a house filled with despair had helped transform it into a home filled with hope. And The children who had been dying had taught everyone around them how to truly live. Maria's eyes widened slightly, but she didn't step away. Mr. Whitmore, Marcus, he corrected gently. And I'm not asking for anything or expecting anything. I just needed you to know that whatever happens in the coming weeks, you've given my family an extraordinary gift. You've helped us transform what could have been just a long goodbye into something beautiful and meaningful and full of love. Maria was quiet for a long moment, her expression thoughtful. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft but steady. Your children have changed my life too, Marcus. They've taught me things about courage and creativity and finding joy in the midst of sorrow that I'll carry with me forever. Being part of this family, even under these circumstances, has been the most meaningful experience of my life. As they stood together in the quiet house, surrounded by the evidence of life and love and hope that his children had created despite their terminal diagnosis, Marcus felt a sense of gratitude that transcended the tragedy they were facing. Whatever the coming weeks would bring, his children would face them surrounded by love, engaged in meaningful work, and secure in the knowledge that their lives had made a profound difference. And he would face those weeks with the support of someone who had shown him that even in the darkest circumstances, it was possible to find light, purpose, and unexpected connections that transformed everything. I think that's a wonderful idea, Marcus said. Would you like to help me plan it? Really plan it, so we can make it real. The enthusiasm in their responses was immediate and overwhelming. For the first time since their diagnosis, his children had something to look forward to that extended beyond their own immediate situation. They had a project that would outlast their own lives and help other children find the same sense of purpose and joy they had discovered. Over the following days, the planning sessions became a central focus of their daily routine. The children approached the project with characteristic seriousness, offering detailed suggestions about design, programming, and operational considerations. Marcus was amazed by their insights and their mature understanding of what other families might need. Emma created detailed drawings of what the art therapy spaces should look like, including considerations for different types of physical limitations. Ethan designed adaptive tools and workspace configurations that would allow children with various capabilities to participate in building and engineering activities. Ellie composed theme music for different areas of the center and developed ideas for music therapy programs. Most importantly, they insisted that the center should be a place of joy, not sadness. Their vision wasn't focused on death or loss, but on life and growth and the celebration of what children could accomplish regardless of their circumstances. As Marcus watched his children pour their creativity and passion into this project, he realized that Maria had been right about transformation. His children were dying, and that remained a devastating reality. But they were also living more fully than most healthy people ever did. They had found a way to turn their suffering into service, their loss into legacy. The garden center would become their gift to the world. But more than that, it would become proof that a life's value isn't measured in years but in the love it gives and the positive change it creates. His children were teaching him that even the shortest lives could have profound and lasting impact. Months, he'd been consumed with grief for the future his children wouldn't have. But Maria was right. They were still having a present, and that present could still be meaningful. The implementation of the new therapeutic program began immediately. Marcus found himself spending more time in the children's wing, not just for his formal visits, but as an observer and sometimes participant in their activities. He watched Emma paint the first sprouts from their herb garden, her face focused and content as she captured the delicate green shoots in watercolor. He helped Ethan design an irrigation system for the plants, impressed by his son's engineering insights despite his young age. He sat quietly while Ellie played her newest composition, a piece inspired by the sound of water dripping from the garden's small fountain. The change in the children was remarkable. They had projects to look forward to, goals to work toward, and a sense that their time was being spent purposefully rather than just passing. Their physical condition continued to decline, but their spirits seemed stronger than they had in months. Marcus began to understand that Maria hadn't just brought new activities to his children. She had brought them a new way of thinking about their lives. Instead of focusing on what they couldn't do, she helped them discover what they could do. Instead of dwelling on how little time they had left, she helped them make that time meaningful. As he watched his children thrive in ways he hadn't thought possible given their circumstances, Marcus realized that Maria Santos had given his family something he hadn't known they needed: hope. Not hope for a medical miracle, but hope that their lives could still have purpose, beauty, and joy regardless of how much time remained. And for the first time since the devastating diagnosis, Marcus began to believe that maybe there were different ways to measure a life well lived. James nodded and left, closing the door quietly behind him. Marcus returned to his whiskey and his dark thoughts, listening to the silence of the house around him. Somewhere above, his children were sleeping, their small bodies fighting a battle they couldn't win. The best medical care in the world surrounded them, but it felt like putting bandages on a dam that was destined to break. Marcus thought about Maria Santos and her comment about feeling called to work with the children. He'd built his fortune on logic, strategy, and calculated risks. The idea of being called to something, of having a purpose beyond profit, was foreign to him. But there had been something in her eyes when she spoke about his children that suggested she understood something he didn't. The clock on the mantelpiece continued its relentless ticking, marking time that was running out. In 6 weeks, maybe 8, the mansion would be silent again. But this time, it would be the silence of loss, not of anticipation. Marcus finished his whiskey and prepared for another sleepless night, haunted by the sound of that clock and the knowledge that all his power, all his wealth, all his success meant nothing in the face of the simple, devastating reality of his children's mortality.